Welcome to Ready for Authentic Love, the podcast where we get raw and real about relationships. This is where inner work meets intimacy, where we unlearn old patterns and rewrite the stories we've been fed about love. I'm Gwen Allison, and each month we'll explore how to build conscious, healing, and fulfilling relationships, especially the relationship you have with yourself. Welcome to Ready for Authentic Love. I'm your host, Gwen Allison. I'm a Reiki Master Teacher and Life Coach. And if you are looking for a love that's a lot deeper, a lot more conscious, a lot more authentic, and you're fed up of past cycles, attracting the wrong people, you want to go deeper basically, then this is the podcast for you, whether you're single and in that phase, which we're going to be talking about today, or whether you're in a relationship and you want to strengthen the bond, you want to know your partner differently and have them know you differently, then this is the podcast for you. Over the coming episodes, we're going to be exploring limited beliefs, the limiting beliefs we have about relationships, the ideas we've been taught about relationships, and just kind of blowing those all away so we can really see the truth and form our own concepts about what a relationship should be. We're going to be looking at our wounds and the wounds that we're constantly, I don't want to say bleeding from, but we're radiating out, which is causing us to attract what we are attracting. We're going to be looking at that and doing some healing around that, some revisiting around that. We will be looking at our recurring cycles as well, really shining a light on that so we can break those cycles and again attract differently because of that. We'll also be looking at what a conscious relationship should look like, what an authentic relationship should look like. And it might surprise you when we come to do that too, when we look at that. We'll be looking at who we're being in relationships, who we want to be and who we're actually being, and bringing into that my understanding of the divine feminine and divine masculine, as well as the wounded and divine feminine and masculine elements as well. All of these things contribute to who we're being and how we're showing up in our relationships. I'm still learning in my relationship right now who I'm being, who I want to be, and showing up each day as I want to be, and having triggers and things come up for me. So for me, the relationship is definitely a mirror. So we'll be talking more about that later. But I know it's something that we're all striving for, right? We're all wanting to land somewhere soft, to be in a relationship where we can truly be ourselves, you know? It should be that space for us. So I'm here to help you kind of form that idea and look at the things that need to kind of maybe shift for that to really happen powerfully for you. But in this first episode, my very first episode, which is finding self in your single season, finding self in your single season. In this episode, I'll be sharing with you about my relationship journey, why this podcast exists. I'll be talking about that as well. And we'll also be looking at exactly that. We're going to understand why our single phase is not a place of lack, not a place of shame or guilt, but it's a really empowering place to be. If we use that space wisely, it can call in what we've been wanting for such a long time. So it's an important space where we come into ourselves, we can see ourselves, we can start to practice the things that we want to have in our relationship when we call that in. So this is an important part. As I said, I'm just going to start by sharing with you a little bit about me and my journey in relationships. And for those of you who don't know, I was divorced well, probably how many years ago now? A long time ago, 2006, I had my divorce. I was divorced after being married for we were together for 15 years, but married for 13 years. And towards the end of that time, I was kind of coming towards my 40s and I was starting to shift a lot, really. I was starting to discover things like the law of attraction with Abraham Hicks. I was watching The Secret and reading The Secret. I discovered Deepak Chopra's book, The Seven Laws of Spiritual Success, which just was mind blowing. And I was just starting to come across this conscious literature, which helped to understand how we create our world through our thoughts, through our emotions, through our behaviors, all of that. Which, when I was going through my divorce, and it could easily have been the catalyst for my divorce, I have to admit, because I was changing and my husband at the time was kind of staying the same. And so through listening to certain videos on YouTube and reading these amazing books, I was starting to understand that I could navigate my divorce completely differently to how I was doing it. So at the time, it was very acrimonious. My husband at the time didn't want that divorce. He was expressing that in an angry way. And so we were constantly clashing, even more so than when we were married. We were clashing a lot. We were not um, connecting at all. My daughter at the time was probably about, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years old. So it was obviously negatively affecting her as well. And, through these teachings, though, I started to learn and see his pain. I could see things from a different perspective. I was starting to see things through a lens of love. It didn't mean that I wanted to change my decision. I still wanted to honor my decision, but it meant that I could spend my time focusing on the things I wanted to create rather than looking back all the time at the complaining and the blaming and trying to justify my decision to everybody out there by further demonizing my husband. It just gave me a different perspective. I started looking forward at things. And also, I was able to see, as I said, I was able to see his pain. I was able to see how my decision um, caused a rupture in his heart, basically. So me seeing that meant that I was coming from a place of compassion. I finally put down my sword and my shield and everything else I was doing battle with, and I could see him as a human being in pain. And that changed everything for us. It meant that things went through in a more amicable way. Things got better for my daughter. And he's still in my life now. I always talk about that. He's still one of my go-to friends right now. At the time of filming this, it's just been my birthday. My daughter's birthday is the day before. We all went out for dinner. We had a great time. It's just really softened that relationship that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have gone through my journey of discovering how powerful our thoughts, our minds, our words were. So yeah, that was, as I said, kind of like 2006, 2008. I remember moving into my new home with my daughter. It was the first time I'd ever lived somewhere on my own, although I was with my daughter, like not with another adult. So it was a real growth journey for me. And I spent a lot of time kind of, buying and acquiring the things that I wanted in my home, trying to make it a place of peace. But I did spend a lot of time yearning to be back in a relationship, to be a family again. And I remember looking at people, looking at others, looking at other families and other couples with not so much jealousy. It was more a yearning, more a poor me kind of look, like, oh my God, they're so lucky, they're in a relationship or they have a family. And I was not seeing my worth. I was seeing myself as less than because I wasn't in a relationship. I wasn't as part of what I felt part of a family. And I remember that really poignantly, it really hurting me whenever I looked at this. And I almost saw the universe as touting me, taunting me, almost saying like, yeah, look, you haven't got this. This is possible. You haven't got this. But then I did start to reframe that. I did start to understand that me and my daughter, that's my family, that's my family and it's good. And I started to have some gratitude and appreciation for that. And I also started to look at these families, look at these couples differently, rather than looking at it in a way that punished me, oh, this is what I haven't got. And, look, the universe is showing it to me again to punish me. I realized that the universe wasn't showing it to punish me. It was showing it to me to help me understand what was possible, how common it was, how common it was. So that whole reframing was a beautiful thing for me. And it's something I share with my clients as well when they go through the same things. Look at the relationships you're seeing as something that's possible, as something that, the universe is saying, this isn't rare. This isn't a rare thing. This can be yours too. So that was a really good thing there. But I spent many years kind of single before my next important relationship. The other relationships were just, superficial, didn't really go very deep. And then I met someone who was It started out really, really, really good. I was a single mum. I was also working as a manager in a role where I was managing other people. So I was very much in my masculine, and this is something we will be talking about in a future episode. I was very much in my masculine, but it was so refreshing to come across someone who was also really in their masculine, which meant that I could be in my feminine. So he would take care of things, our dates, where we would go. He would plan all of that. I didn't have to think about anything, guys. And that was really refreshing initially, really refreshing. But then it started to seep in a little bit much into other areas, and I really wasn't happy with that. And I decided to end the relationship, although I loved him at the time. It was very difficult to end that relationship. I also questioned his fidelity as well. But there were lots of things that weren't quite right. But at the end of that relationship, I realized that I had lost myself in that relationship. I realized that I'd lost my goals, the things I wanted to do. Back in 2008, after my divorce, I trained as a life coach because I wanted to show other women how they could powerfully move through their divorce. So yeah, I wanted to find something to add to my life coaching. This was like 2015 now. And, as I said, it was just me and my daughter. And I was putting on a brave face for my daughter, not really showing her, what I was feeling, which is something I also did after my divorce, which will become relevant a little bit later. Um, and so I wanted to, as I said, reconnect with my goals, reconnect with the things that I wanted to do that I'd forgotten and let go of. Because, guys, I wear my heart on my sleeve. If I get into a relationship, that's it. I'm all into the relationship. Everything was falling by the wayside, and I didn't want that to happen again. So I wanted to find something that would heal me, as well as find something I could add as a modality to deepen my life coaching practice and help my clients. Because I was still doing my coaching on the side. I was still working full time as well in IT. So um, yeah, this is when I discovered Reiki. This is when I discovered other modalities like the emotion code and Psyche, things that allowed me to change my limiting beliefs, release emotions and things like that, and do a lot of work on myself. Um, and through Reiki, as well as adding it for my clients, I was able to give myself Reiki every single day. I would give myself Reiki and still do. So it also introduced me to meditation. I think I discovered that through Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's an incredible spiritual teacher who talks about meditation. He has really long meditations that get you to let go of who you think you're being. So you just become nothing, no one, nowhere. And you're able from that nothingness, from that unknown, to start creating your life. So these are really good people to look into, guys, if you want to. But yeah, so all of this work I was doing on self, um, and I spent many years not dating. I didn't date anybody, not even a single date. And I'm not saying necessarily that was by choice, because initially during this time, after I became single and ended that second relationship, I was still yearning for another relationship, and I remember that I was doing my work on self, but I still had this yearning to be in a relationship. I still felt a little bit of a lack, like I wasn't enough. Everybody else had relationships, and what's going on with me. I did remember the reframing of looking at relationships as a blessing, started going back to that, but it was still something that was really primary for me. And I remember I would write my goals, and still do. At the beginning of the year, I would write down all the goals, all the things I wanted for myself at the start of the year, looking at all the different areas, looking at relationships, looking at career and business, looking at health, looking at spirituality. I'd write everything down. And I remember one particular year, I'd finished doing this exercise. I'd written everything down about me. And then I came to the end of it, and I was like, oh, lovely. I think I've got everything. And I forgot relationships. I hadn't put relationships on. And it was always the first thing I would have put on. Always, always, always was the first thing I wrote when I wrote down my goals. I want this happy, loving, fulfilling relationship. I hadn't even put it on. So I added it on. I put it on at the end. So it was on there. But it occurred to me how much I'd shifted. how much that wasn't my primary thing anymore, that my focus is now about me and the life I was creating for myself and my daughter. It was more about my business and the people I wanted to serve. And I realized I'd created this home that was really peaceful for me, really tranquil. It was my sanctuary. I'd also had this daily practice that was also a place of solace and comfort for me, a place of being able to work with my emotions and things that came up, as well as my connection to the universe and God and that divine connection. And part of me didn't want to ruin that. Part of me didn't want to bring someone in to that beautiful space and have them ruin it all. And it wasn't until I was talking about this to my daughter and she was kind of saying, I think you're avoidant, Mum, you're avoidant. And I was like, I'm not avoidant. But she was right. I was avoidant. I was avoiding, I'd done a lot of work on self and I was avoiding a relationship because I knew that maybe there'd be some triggers, maybe there'd be some things. And I didn't really want to go there. I still had this fear about relationships. I had a fear of being rejected. I had a fear of being brokenhearted. I had a fear of being cheated on. I had a fear of losing everything I'd worked for this person, that I would just like forget about everything and just put all of my effort into this person. I had all these fears. And although I'd done a lot of work on self, it also occurred to me that training or that work had to continue in the new relationship. I understood that the relationship would bring more healing. The healing had to continue in the relationship, and I couldn't avoid that if I wanted a relationship. And the analogy I have is, I share with my clients is that it's like having a fear of flying and you do all this work on the ground. You go for hypnosis, you do all these courses, you do, have therapy, you talk to people, you do all these things on the ground, but you never actually get back on the plane. How do you know then if you've actually healed? How do you know if you've overcome what you think you've overcome? When then do you get the opportunity to practice these new skills that you've learned? Like when you're going through turbulence, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to breathe. You don't get to practice that. You don't get to really see if you've healed until you get back on the plane. And the relationship is the same. You don't really get to see if you've grown, if you've healed, and you don't get to complete that healing until you get back into a relationship. So, as scary as that was for me, I knew I had to really kind of open up and embrace that. So, yeah, that was something that was important for me. And in doing that, I met my current partner. We've been together for 3 years now. The journey continues, guys. Sorry to say, it continues. You'll come across things that will trigger you in this relationship. You'll get the opportunity to practice being you, whether it's in your communication or in how you deal with conflict. You'll see your inner child come out, 100% transparency. I am an anxious, maybe slightly avoidant attachment style. And I have to deal with that in my relationship. Sometimes my partner's oblivious to all of this. So you will see your truth, and I'll be sharing these things with you, how to deal with these different attachment styles, because it isn't a question of, I used to be anxious, now I'm secure. I don't think that really happens, guys. We have to live with this anxious attachment style because it isn't just born from previous relationships. It's come through how the things we've gone through in childhood, our inner wounds, our childhood wounds. It's also ancestral. So there'll be moments in our relationship that challenge us and that bring forth this wounded inner child, this anxious attachment style. And it's what we do in those moments that I'll be sharing with you as we go. I really want women to win at relationships. I want to win at relationships, but this is a journey. This is a journey for all of us. And it's not a question of, oh, I've got a new relationship now. Okay, cool. I can tear up all my books. I can da da da. It carries on. It carries on. So yeah, that's the perspective I'm coming from, and that's why I created this podcast. so that we can share this journey together. I can share what I know already. I can share what's worked for me. I can share what's worked for my clients, and I can share how I've moved through certain things as they come up, as I come across them. I'll be sharing them with you. So, as I said, whether you're single and looking for that relationship, that deeper relationship, or whether you're in a relationship and you want to strengthen and deepen the relationship, then this podcast is for you. So yeah, we're going to move into now. As I said, this first episode is primarily about finding self in your single season. And so we are going to be looking at that phase. As I said, it is not a phase to be, we don't want to be running through this phase. We don't want to be damning this phase. We don't want to be feeling, bad that we're here and yearning to be out of it too quickly. We need to sit in this singlehood, this singledom, this single phase, because this is where we will get so much growth. And I must say, guys, the work that we'll be doing over the coming episodes and the epiphanies you'll be having about yourself, it's going to shift you, it's going to change you. So this work comes with a little health warning, okay? It's going to change the energy of you. And so it's going to change it from neediness to, oh, I love myself. I know who I am. I'm authentic. That's going to radiate out a different energy, a different frequency, a different light that's going to be very attractive. You're going to be removing your blocks, and just to say, when we think we're protecting our hearts and we're protecting ourselves, we're not. We're actually holding on to the blocks. So the work we're going to be doing, the things I'm going to be talking about, will hopefully allow you to remove those blocks, and that will make you very attractive. And so it's going to be very, very, very tempting for you to see someone, they're interested in you, and you think, okay, I'm done. This is it. This is it. I've attracted this person. This is my new relationship now. That's it. But when you do that too soon, guys, all of these old wounds come up in their intensity. And I've seen it happen over and over again. And we don't have to wait for our wounds to be fully healed. I'm not saying that, but you want to be further along the line than you are now. When we're in our relationships, you want to be in a relationship with someone who's also working on themselves just like you. So that says already that the relationship is not a place where I'm perfect and you're perfect and we just need to rush off into the sunset and that's it. It isn't going to be like that. But just be warned, you will do some beautiful work here in this space on your own, in your single season, and that is beautifully attractive energy. Don't take the bait. Be strong. Stay in this phase. You will know. And you'll see the signs later on. You're like, yeah, my God, I dodged a bullet there. It's a good thing I didn't go for that because this came up and I would not have been able to deal with it. So do trust me on this. But yeah, so looking at that, your single season is a place to treasure, is a place to embrace. And one of the reasons we'll look at a few three reasons today as well. But one of the reasons is that you will meet your true self. As I said, you'll have space to make your home your sanctuary. You're no longer needing to run after anybody else. You can please yourself. You can do the things you want to do when you want to do it. And so that gives you the space to do your healing, to have your time of compassion for yourself, because you're not, particularly if you are a people pleaser, which I can be too, that you're not spending your time running after someone else and trying to please someone else. It really is your time to kind of really please you and focus on you. I know some of us fear being alone, and I was very much like that as well. We fear being on our own. We fear being alone. We fear being judged for being single. But this is a time for you to really develop your interests. As I said, do the things that you want to do. Take some time to write down, particularly, right? If you're in a relationship, what would you be doing now? And when you see those things, firstly, don't wait for a relationship to do those things. Do them now. Go on that holiday to the country you've always wanted to visit now. Learn that new skill now, roller skating or whatever it is you wanted to do. Go and do these things. Go and visit that beautiful restaurant. One of my favorite things is going to a beautiful restaurant for lunch and sitting there. Learn to embrace your own company. Learn to be with you. This helps us in many ways. One, when we embrace our interests and we start fostering and nurturing our own interests, we become interesting. They're also looking for that too. They're looking for somebody interesting. They don't want to be the one that you're clinging to for your interests, and you don't want to vicariously be living through them. You want to have your own things to bring to the party, and you'll share interests and you'll have your own interests, which means that you're not always reliant on each other's company. Sometimes you'll go off and do your thing, and sometimes you'll come together and do things together. It makes you more well-rounded. So find time to, understand what interests you, what excites you. If you're spiritual, you can check out things like meetup groups. You can check out Eventbrite. There's so many things to check out there. I remember one of my clients, she was recently single. She was in her 30s. So a lot of her friends were in relationships and they had babies and things like that. So they didn't have time for going out. And so I talked to her about, you know, having a look on Eventbrite, a meetup, and finding some groups who are into meditation or women's circles, sound baths. There's so many interesting things to explore if spirituality is your interest or anything is your interest. And so a couple of weeks later, we connected again, and she was just sharing how she has no time now. She's always out. She's out with her friends. She's made some really wonderful friendships, and they're people who are aligned with who she is and where she is now. And yeah, she was really enjoying her time. So it's as simple as that. Just finding what works and exploring. You don't have to land and it be perfect. You can explore, decide that, okay, I don't like that. That's not my thing. Okay, I might try axe throwing. Okay, that gets out some aggression. I really love that. Or that's not my thing. So it's you tasting what life has to offer, when you're playing with your interests. But boredom, that's a big enemy. That's when we do a lot. The mind wanders, it creates all sorts of stories. But practicing being on your own is good. The other thing I get my clients to do is to, if they are, some of my clients seriously do not like being on their own. Like they cannot even go to a restaurant, sit and have some lunch and just enjoy that. They can't do that. Um, and so that's something to practice if that's you. Go out to your favorite restaurant, sit there. You're not allowed to be on the phone. That's a no-no. You can't be on the phone, but you can sit and you can maybe, I don't know, you might read a book, you might read a Kindle book or something. But you're looking around at the people around you, you're ordering the best food on the menu, food you're gonna love. And you'll soon notice that nobody is paying you any attention. Most people are not thinking about you. They've got their own stuff to be worried about, and that's what they're thinking about. So you go into these restaurants, you sit, you have your lunch, you order what you want, you enjoy the view, you enjoy the time. The waiter or waitress is really kind to you and things like that. Maybe you set in that intention before you go in that you have a really lovely time there. And that one session just changes everything for you. I have my clients messaging me pictures of them, even in Starbucks, having a coffee. Oh my God, I'm going to do this all the time. It was wonderful. They then find that they've got this place of peace they can go to. You can stay in your home, or particularly if you work for yourself or you're working from home, you can maybe go and work somewhere different that day because you're not frightened of being judged. You've got your laptop, you've got your phone, you've got your book, and you're just being in these spaces, people watching, and just being content with being with you and being on your own. That's really important. And I guess that's why it's nice to make your space at home a space that you want to be. So fill it with lovely things that you resonate with. When I look around my room, I have Buddha statues, I have my diffuser, I have my sound bowls. I'm surrounded with things and images and things that make this home for me. So do the same for you if you haven't done that yet. So you enjoy being in that space. The other thing that does when you're spending time on your own, it allows you to be comfortable in silence. And it took me a while to get used to that. And that was only really in this relationship. What I was finding in my relationship now is every time we were silent, I didn't like it. I was like, oh my God, maybe he doesn't like me anymore. Maybe he thinks I'm boring. I need to fill the space with something. And I would fill it with superficial chatter. And he called me out on that. It's like, why do you feel you need to talk in the silence? It's fine. I notice you don't like silence. I do. I don't, and I didn't like silence. And so practicing that, being on your own, being in the silence and letting the silence be okay. I can now sit there in my relationship with my partner. The silence comes and it's fine. I kind of relish it. I focus my attention back on me. I'm not focused on him and what he's thinking anymore. The silence feels expansive, feels good, And so practicing that silence means that you can sit in silence when you have those silent moments in your relationship. You can enjoy that. You're not wanting to fill it. You're not pushing the energy out, which they can feel. You're just sitting there and being there. And that allows for maybe them to say something. Maybe they feel that space and they're like, oh, there's space there for me to say something that's coming up, but we sometimes just want to talk and talk and talk and fill the space with our energy. So enjoying the silence is important. Enjoying the silence is important. Yeah. So yeah, that's another thing. Just basically that enjoying our own time, enjoying our space by ourselves. This is where we start to meet our true selves and notice who we're being, when we're with other people. And we can practice that not just with, you're not waiting for this new relationship to practice that, put it that way. We can practice this, who we want to be, being comfortable with ourselves, comfortable with silence, with our friends as well, giving them space to talk, holding space for them. Yeah. So embracing all of that is important. So yeah, meetups, uh, Eventbrite, these are spaces where you can start to explore different things of interest so you can become more interesting to yourself, but also you're not really doing it for them, right? You're doing it for you and your own growth. You're honoring the things you want to do rather than waiting for permission when you meet someone to go out and do that. Yeah. The second reason why having this time alone is important is that it gives you the space to heal your past wounds, as we talked about. And it heals faster a little bit, when you're kind of on your own. You can see your patterns, you can see your cycles, you can start to shift your own beliefs and practice that. Whenever we shift something or we say to the universe, right, I'm going to be different, I'm going to do something different, guaranteed the universe will test you. The universe, she's not trying to sabotage you, just test you. Okay, you think you've changed. Let's see. This person comes up. Normally they would trigger you. How are you going to react? So that time alone gives us our space to practice that. And we will be exploring that more in later episodes, but this is going to be really your time to build that self-love without interruption, without distraction. We can do this work, whatever that looks like for you, whether it looks like meditation, whether it looks like learning a new modality, healing modality, whether it looks like going off to an ashram somewhere or a silent retreat or journaling something. For me, it was definitely exploring different modalities, but also having time on my own, and meditating in those spaces, setting my intention, meditating. I was also doing a lot of work to release emotional blocks that I had, which, we will kind of be looking at things like that, just looking at what was in my body, looking at what was coming up from these emotions. Because we're never taught how to sit with our emotions, guys. We're told just to kind of, put up, shut up, get on with it. Don't cry, push it down. You got to be there for everybody else. You got to, particularly if we're like mothers and we're holding the whole family together, or we're an elder in our family, or we're looking after the elders in our family. We have so much responsibility, which means that we can't really sit with our emotions. So giving yourself space to do that in your single season is important. Not just examining what comes up in the relationship, but what shows up in all of your relationships. In this life, I truly believe that it's our role in relationships to be as authentic as possible. That's why we're here. This for me is the journey, to be as authentic as possible. And that's not easy. That's not easy. We're shaped by other people's views and beliefs and everything else. And not just our family, but obviously the media, social media, religions, all of that, that we don't even know who we really are. So that time on our own gives us that space to start to discover who we really are. and become more authentic. As I said, this is why I think we're in relationships. The purpose of a relationship is to be that mirror. I'm being a mirror for you, which means that if I'm really authentic, I will call you out when you're not doing what you should be doing, when your reaction is not really wholesome or compassionate. If I'm being authentic, I will call you out. If I'm not being authentic, I won't call you out. I'll let it slide, or I'll blame myself, or I'll overreact, and not really give you the space to actually see how you were being. And the same for me. You show me who I'm being. And I may not like that. I may not like who I'm being, but I know it's calling me to that authenticity. So I know I need to see this. I'll come across times when I might want to speak up about something or say something because you acted in a way that was dishonoring to me, or I didn't like, and I'm really feeling the fear of starting that conversation, but the authenticity in me will keep me moving forward. And then at the end of it, guys, the reward of having these authentic conversations, and we'll be looking at this as well in future episodes. We'll be looking at conflict, we'll be looking at vulnerability. The reward is beautiful. It deepens your relationship. But that's why we're doing this. And that's why you need your space on your own, because you can practice that in your friendships. You can practice that with your family, and not just wait until you're in a relationship to be that. But the truest relationship you need to have is your relationship with you. And so, yeah, the second reason why having this time alone is important, and not a punishment, is because you can do your healing in this space. You can start your healing in this space. And then the third and final reason I'm looking at today, why being single is a beautiful thing, is because it raises your standards. It raises our standards, guys. And when we build that self-love, we will not accept anyone that loves us less than we love ourselves. And so we start to see the red flags more quickly. And because we know our worth, we know our value because we've done this work. We're happy to wait for the right person. We're happy to wait for someone who's also working on themselves, not necessarily perfect, but they're working on themselves, because we're also saying we're not perfect. So yeah, that's the third important reason. It allows us to raise our standards and unapologetically choose who we want to be with, but also understand that we are choosing. We'll be talking about dating as well. We're choosing, always choosing. So yeah. So yeah, be gentle with yourself, guys. If you're single right now, I challenge you to give yourself time to enjoy this phase of your life. If you're in a relationship and you're wanting to work at your relationship, to deepen your relationship, then yeah, this podcast will start to shift your perspective about them and about who you're being as well. You may want to try a couple of journal prompts for you. If you've got your pen, if not, grab your pen or pause this podcast and go and get your pen. So the first I have is, who am I being if I'm not trying to be chosen? You know, who do I want to be if I'm not trying to be chosen? Yeah, any permutations of that question is what you want to ask yourself. And the second question I have for your journal is, what do I truly need in love that I can give to myself? What do I truly need in love that I can give to myself? Okay, so these are wonderful things to kind of journal at, guys. Journal. And yeah, do let me know what came up for you, in the wherever you're watching this podcast right now. Do let me know in the comment section and review section. But yeah, so I hope that you found my very first episode useful, as we start to get ourselves ready for authentic love. I hope you continue to join me every month for this podcast. Do subscribe, share with your best friends. Please leave a review wherever you're watching this podcast now. And yeah, if you'd like to find out more about me, then do visit my website, myspiritualbutterfly.com. But yeah, I really hope that that this podcast resonated with you, that you're kind to yourself, compassionate with yourself, that you enjoy the season that you're in, whatever it is right now, and that you, yeah, just open your heart to the love that you are. There's so much more to share that's within you. And yeah, just give yourself permission to feel that love and be that love unapologetically. Thank you.